God damn it. Finally out, I muttered, a cold smirk twisting my lips. Your family's good life is officially over. My name is Ethan Vance, but the soul inside this body is new. 3 months ago, I woke up and found myself inside a web novel I'd once read. Asylum for the Impostor. I had become the story's tragic, true heir. He was the Vance family's biological son, lost for 18 years before being found. He thought returning to his wealthy family was the beginning of a fairy tale, but he had just stepped into hell. The impostor, Caleb Vance, acted gentle and kind, but was secretly plotting his downfall at every turn. My parents, Robert and Sharon Vance, were so biased it was criminal. They only ever listened to their adopted son's side of the story. Even my fiancée, Khloe Preston, slowly drifted toward the seemingly fragile Caleb, who always looked like he needed protecting. Finally, after a violent outburst meticulously engineered by Caleb, the original Ethan was slapped with a schizophrenia diagnosis and forcibly committed to this private psychiatric hospital. In just 3 months, the once healthy, optimistic young man was tortured into a walking skeleton through various drug treatments and special care. He finally gave out on a cold night, dying without a sound. And that's when I arrived. I inherited all of the original Ethan's pain, humiliation, and hatred. 3 months of inhumane treatment. The cold needles, the handfuls of pills shoved down my throat every day. And the orderlies, bribed by Caleb, who subjected me to beatings and humiliation every few days. I endured it all. For that alone, not a single member of the Vance family, not that trashy imposter, not one of them, was getting away with it. I raised a hand and hailed a cab, giving the driver the address that was in my memory, both incredibly luxurious and unbearably cold. Number 888, Sterling Gates. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his eyes a mix of surprise and a faint, poorly concealed contempt. It made sense. A guy in a wrinkled hospital gown getting a cab right outside a psychiatric facility practically screams mental patient. The car sped along, the glittering cityscape outside the window meaning nothing to me. I leaned back against the seat and closed my eyes. My mind, however, was racing, churning over the one question that had occupied my every waking moment in that hospital: how to inflict the maximum possible revenge on this family. Honestly, it wasn't even about avenging the original Ethan. I never had much sympathy for such a pathetic pushover who just took whatever was thrown at him. But maybe I took over too early. I was the one who personally suffered in that asylum for 3 months. And I don't forgive. I don't forget. I looked down at the psychiatric diagnosis certificate in my hand, a cold smile spreading across my face. A mental illness is a great thing to have. It means you don't have to take responsibility for your actions. What are you smiling at? The driver asked, his voice edgy. He glanced from my smirking face to my hospital gown, a shiver of fear clearly running down his spine. Hey man, don't go having an episode in my car. He muttered under his breath. Damn, what a shitty fare to get first thing in the morning. Smack! The sound of a sharp slap echoed in the cab. I'd hit him so hard his head snapped to the side. You son of a bitch, you hit me. You got a death wish or something. He didn't finish his sentence before 2 more slaps landed squarely on his face. He pulled the car over to the shoulder and started to unbuckle his seatbelt, but I landed several quick punches on his body before he could. Don't provoke me, I said, my voice dangerously calm, though my fists didn't stop. I just got discharged. If you trigger another episode, you're going to be in a world of hurt. All right. My mistake. I'm sorry, man. I don't want any trouble. Hearing the word episode, the driver, who had been ready to fight, immediately began apologizing profusely. No one in their right mind wants to pick a fight with a psycho. 40 minutes later, the cab stopped in front of a luxurious mansion. I got out, and before I could even pull out my phone to pay, the driver slammed on the gas and peeled out. I looked at the house that should have been filled with warm memories, but I felt nothing but a chilling emptiness. Maybe after today, this cold, sterile house would finally liven up a bit. I straightened my wrinkled hospital gown. That's right. I wore it out on purpose, just to piss them off. When I reached the massive front door, I didn't ring the bell. That wouldn't fit my new persona. Instead, I took a step back, gathered my strength, and kicked the exquisite solid wood door with a thunderous bang. The sound reverberated through the high-ceilinged foyer, freezing the picture-perfect scene in the living room. My so-called parents, Robert and Sharon Vance, the impostor Caleb, and my supposed fiancée, Khloe Preston. They were all gathered together, staring at a phone screen with blissful smiles. Wedding planning brochures and fabric samples were scattered across the coffee table. They were clearly planning a celebration. At the sound of the door crashing open, for heads snapped up in unison, their expressions shifting from joy to shock, smiles frozen on their faces. Robert was the first to react, his brow instantly furrowing. His eyes were like ice. "Ethan, who the hell let you out? Are you even cured?" Sharon recoiled as if she'd seen something filthy, instinctively leaning closer to Caleb. "How did you get out so soon?" she shrieked. "And why are you wearing that disgusting outfit back here? Who are you trying to scare? Go change now." Caleb's performance was the most impressive. Seeing me standing there like a storm cloud, his pupils first contracted in a flash of hidden panic. He immediately regained his composure, instantly slipping into that familiar mask of pure, earnest sincerity. He shot up from the couch and rushed toward me, his face a perfect picture of worry and relief, an act worthy of an Oscar. "Ethan, you're finally out. This is wonderful. We were all so worried about you." He reached out to grab my arm, his tone so genuine it almost made me second-guess myself. "You must have suffered so much in there. Come on, sit down. Are you hungry? I'll get you something to eat." I violently shook his hand off, the force sending him stumbling backward, nearly tripping over his own feet. Khloe turned pale, her gaze darting away, unable to meet my eyes. She nervously twisted the hem of her dress, the picture of guilt and fear. "Worried about me?" I scoffed, my eyes flicking to the phone screen they had been looking at. It was a picture from a wedding photo shoot, with Caleb and Khloe holding each other intimately. "Looks to me like you were worried I'd show up and interrupt your wedding planning." "What? I'm not even dead yet, and you're already this desperate to have him take my place with my fiancée." My father Robert's face darkened. "You little bastard, watch your mouth," he barked. "Since you're out, you'd better start behaving. Don't even think about bullying your brother. You hear me? Or I'll send you right back where you came from." His threat was delivered with the casual authority of a man scolding a disobedient dog. My mother Sharon rushed toward me, jabbing a finger in my face, her nail almost digging into my skin. "Didn't you learn your lesson in there? I'm telling you, if you have another one of your fits, we'll send you back. And this time, you won't be getting out. Save us the public embarrassment." I couldn't even be bothered to lift an eyelid at their attitude. In my mind, they weren't even family. They were less than strangers. I shoved her hand away with enough force that she lost her balance and tumbled onto the sofa. The move left all of them stunned. The compliant, submissive Ethan they knew was gone. This one dared to lay a hand on his own mother. Wasting words on them was pointless. After my time in the asylum, I knew one thing for certain. Reason was a language this family did not speak. Ignoring their shouting, I headed straight for the stairs. Right now, all I wanted was a hot shower to wash away the stench of that hospital, and then a long sleep to recharge. I reached the room at the end of the hallway, grabbed the handle, and turned. It didn't budge. My room was locked. So, in my absence, I didn't even have a room to my name anymore. A surge of rage flared up inside me. I took a step back and, without a moment's hesitation, drove my foot straight into the lock. Crack! The door couldn't withstand the force of my anger-fueled kick. It flew open, slammed against the wall behind it, and bounced back. The scene inside made me laugh out of pure fury. What was once a simple, modest room was now crammed with expensive toys, limited edition collectibles, and high-end sports equipment. It had become a luxury storage unit. It seemed Caleb had been doing quite well for himself while I was away, so showered with gifts that his own room couldn't hold them all. With a cold sneer, I walked into the en-suite bathroom and took a long, hot shower, washing away every last trace of the asylum. I dried myself with a clean towel from the cabinet and rummaged through the closet, finding a set of clothes that Caleb must have deemed too plain to wear. It was a step down, but anything was better than that hospital gown. Then I got to work. I grabbed pairs of ridiculously expensive-looking limited edition sneakers and tossed them out the door, one after another. I picked up exquisitely packaged, collectible models and flung them into the hallway without a second glance. I drag out the set of dumbbells and other workout gear, piece by piece, and heave them over the second-floor railing without hesitation. Crash! Smash! The sounds of things shattering on the polished marble floor below were deafening. With every impact, a little more of the toxic anger inside me dissipated. The cheerful chatter from downstairs had long since stopped, replaced by the sound of rapid, frantic footsteps. What was that? What's happening? That was Sharon's shrill, panicked voice. My gifts. Those are my prize collections. That was Caleb, his voice choked with sobs. He actually sounded genuinely heartbroken. Ethan, you psycho, what the hell are you doing? Robert roared as he charged up the stairs. The three of them appear at my doorway, their faces turning ashen as they took in the disaster zone. When their eyes fell on the wreckage in the grand foyer below, their breathing grew heavy with rage. When Caleb saw his precious treasures scattered and broken, especially the shattered remains of what was supposedly a globally limited edition figurine under my foot, his eyes instantly turned red, tears welling up on command. He really should have been an actor. The look of a poor, pitiful victim who had been bullied relentlessly was so convincing, it almost made me feel like I was the bad guy. He sniffled, tears threatening to fall, and choked out, his voice trembling with despair. Ethan, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have put my things in your room. I know you hate me. I'll pack my things and leave right now. I'll get out of your sight forever. He actually made a move as if to run downstairs, the perfect picture of a man heartbroken and driven to despair. Caleb, what are you talking about? Sharon grabbed him, holding on for dear life, her heart clearly breaking for him. She turned to me, her eyes filled with a murderous rage. Ethan, why are you acting like a maniac the second you get back? Do you just want to tear this family apart? Look what you've done to your brother. If anything happens to him, I will never forgive you. Robert was so furious a vein throbbed in his forehead. He pointed a shaking finger at me. You worthless parasite. You're nothing but trouble. Apologize to your brother right now. Then you will pick up every single one of his things and put them back. If one thing is missing, I'll skin you alive. Even Khloe, who had been silent, frowned and added her soft-spoken 2 cents, though she still couldn't look me in the eye. Ethan, you just got out. Your emotions are still unstable. Please don't be so impulsive. Caleb, he can't handle this kind of stress. You know how much psychological trauma he's already suffered because of you. Her words seemed to be a cue for Caleb, who had been crying over his broken figurine. He suddenly clutched his head. Aya! He let out a scream, so shrill it barely sounded human, his face contorting in agony as his body began to tremble violently. It's my fault. It's all my fault. I shouldn't be alive. I stole everything from my brother. I deserve to die. I'll just go die. Then Ethan will be happy. Everyone will be happy. As he shrieked hysterically, he spun around with the dramatic flair of a stage actor and sprinted toward the large window at the end of the hall. It was a picture window with a low railing for aesthetic purposes. Caleb, no! Sharon and Khloe screamed in terror, their faces as white as sheets, lunging forward to stop him. Robert panicked too, rushing after them. Son, don't do anything stupid. Just as they were about to pass me, I grabbed the new, gleaming metal baseball bat that had been leaning in a corner of the room. Probably another one of Caleb's many birthday or consolation gifts. I hefted it. It had a nice, solid weight to it. Excellent. I swung. Whoosh! The bat cut through the air, whistling as it passed inches from Robert and Sharon's faces, before slamming violently into the floorboards in front of them. Thud! The impact left a deep crack in the hardwood. The three of them froze mid-stride, staring at me in absolute terror, their eyes nearly bugging out of their sockets. The color drained from their faces. They stood with their mouths agape, unable to make a sound, their ragged, trembling breaths echoing in the hallway. I held the bat and slowly straightened up, my icy gaze sweeping over their terrified faces. My voice was calm, but it carried a chilling menace that made their skin crawl. I'm standing right here, I said, enunciating every word. Let's see who dares to take another step. Robert, his authority as a father challenged like never before, was the first to recover. Shaking with rage, he pointed at me, his voice trembling slightly. You're insane. You've lost your mind. What do you think you're doing? Are you going to hit your own father? Put the bat down now. Sharon started shrieking, but her body remained rooted to the spot. He's going to kill us. The lunatic is going to kill us. Call the police. Get him locked back up. Let him rot in there for the rest of his life. Khloe, hiding behind them, was sobbing. Ethan, please calm down. Put the bat down. I'm begging you. Can't we just talk about this? Without another word, I swung the bat again, this time aiming directly for Robert. Ah! He yelped, scrambling backward so clumsily he almost fell over, a comical and pathetic sight. Sharon and Khloe screamed in perfect, high-pitched harmony, ducking and covering their heads as if the next blow was meant for them. Damn right I'm a psycho. I roared, pointing the bat at them, a ferocious grin on my face. I have a doctor's certificate to prove it, signed and sealed. If I were to beat you all to death right here, right now, do you think a judge would sentence me to death? The worst I get is more mandatory treatment. And hey, I chuckled. I just came from that place. I know the routine. I don't mind going back for another little vacation. My gaze shifted past them to Caleb, who was still frozen by the window, one leg already over the railing. He clearly hadn't expected things to escalate this way. He was stuck, holding a difficult, dramatic about-to-jump pose that now just looked awkward and forced. Today, I said, my voice dropping low, I'm going to let you all watch and see if he actually has the guts to jump. And if he doesn't, I added, a hint of manic excitement in my eyes, I'll help him. Anyone who tries to stop me gets their legs broken first. The blood drained from Caleb's face. He was perched precariously, one leg dangling outside, his hands gripping the window frame for dear life. He was trapped. The breeze from the open window messed up his perfectly styled hair. He looked less like a man on the verge of tragic suicide and more like someone who had ridden a tiger and couldn't get off. He had probably never dreamed that his go-to, foolproof victim act would backfire so spectacularly against a certified psycho who refused to play by the rules. Time seemed to stand still. My so-called family was paralyzed, terrified by the baseball bat in my hand and my psycho's get-out-of-jail-free card. They just stood there, staring helplessly at Caleb, their eyes filled with panic and anguish. Caleb's expression twisted and warped, his eyes darting back and forth. After 2 or 3 minutes of deafening silence, he made his move. His eyes rolled back in his head. He let out a soft ugh, and his body went limp, sliding down the window frame to crumple in a heap on the floor. He had fainted. Caleb, Sharon cried out. Maternal instinct momentarily overrode her fear, and she started to rush forward again. I snorted, blocking her path with the bat. She froze instantly, as if I'd hit a pause button. Tears streamed down her face. Please, honey, I just want to check on your brother. He's passed out. We need to get him to a hospital. What if something is seriously wrong? A hospital? I laughed, walking slowly toward Caleb, bat in hand. Don't worry. I learned a few things during my time in the asylum. I'm practically an expert at emergency medicine, especially for these sudden, fainting spells. I guarantee I can wake him up. I crouched down and looked closely at Caleb's tightly shut eyes and his eyelids, which were trembling ever so slightly as he struggled to keep them closed. So, you do know fear after all. Look serious. I nodded gravely. Then I began to slowly, deliberately take off my shoe. What? What are you doing? Sharon asked, a terrible premonition making her voice shake. I ignored her. I raised the expensive leather dress shoe I had just removed and began slapping it across Caleb's pale, now rigid face. Left, right. Slap, slap, slap. I didn't hold back. After a few solid hits, his cheeks began to swell, turning a blotchy red with a clear imprint of my shoe. The edge of the sole even cut his lip, drawing a trickle of blood. But he held on, his eyelids twitching more violently, but refusing to open. I had to admit, I was almost impressed by his willpower. TSK, stubborn little bastard, I muttered, dropping the shoe. I stood up and clapped my hands together. All right, no choice. Time for the ultimate treatment. I glanced over at the housekeeper, Maria, who was cowering in a corner. I walked over and whispered something in her ear. A look of horror crossed her face. Mr. Ethan, I can't. Don't argue with me. Just go. Maria, pale with fear, scurried off to do as I said. Robert and Sharon's faces turned a sickly green. Ethan, don't you dare. Don't you lay another finger on Caleb. Watch me. I snarled. I spun around, swung the bat, and smashed it into a mahogany pedestal table holding an antique vase. With an explosive crash, the priceless antique shattered into 1,000 pieces. The hallway fell silent again. A moment later, an indescribable stench, a foul, rancid mix of sour rot and excrement, wafted up the stairs. Maria reappeared, trembling, carrying a stainless steel bowl filled with a murky, disgusting sludge of urine, feces, and kitchen scraps. Her own face was contorted in a desperate attempt to hold back her vomit. I took the bowl from her, my expression blank. Ignoring Robert and Sharon's screams of "don't" and "stop," I pinched Caleb's nose, forced his mouth open, and poured the contents down his throat. Belay gag. Caleb's eyes flew open. He violently shoved me away and collapsed onto the floor, retching so hard it looked like he was trying to vomit up his internal organs. The scene was dead silent. The only sound was Caleb's soul-tearing heaves echoing through the mansion. Robert, Sharon, and Khloe stared at the pathetic figure on the floor, face swollen, smeared with filth, their expressions a chaotic mess of horror and disgust. They wanted to go to him, but the sight and smell of the vile mess on the floor made them instinctively recoil. Seeing Caleb awake, they finally understood. Even they weren't stupid enough to miss what had just happened. And yet, Sharon still defended him. Even if Caleb was pretending, you can't do something so disgusting. Look how terrified he is. What if you made him sick for real? Robert, trying to salvage a shred of his authority, added grimly, "This is absolute madness. You're completely out of control." I looked at them and laughed, a cold, mocking sound. Of course, favoritism was etched into their very bones. Even with the truth laid bare before them, they still chose to protect the one who knew how to cry and play the victim. Fine by me. I had plenty of time and plenty of ways to play with them. I'm tired. Playtime's over for tonight. Go back to your room. My smile vanished. I pointed the bat toward the master bedroom. And don't bother me again, I said in a tone that left no room for argument. My nerves are shot. I have no idea what I might do next. Robert opened his mouth to protest, but one cold glare from me silenced him. His lips trembled, and finally, with Sharon pulling at his arm, they all scurried away. Khloe followed close behind, her head bowed, not daring to look at me again. Finally, peace and quiet. I went back to the room and locked the broken door behind me. I threw myself onto the bed and stared up at the ornate crystal chandelier on the ceiling. "This is just the beginning," I whispered to the empty room. "You'll all get used to your new life." Slowly. The next day, they called the psychiatric hospital, demanding they come and take me back. But I called the police. Under police supervision, the hospital ran a few tests. The result, I wasn't having an active episode, but I shouldn't be overly stimulated. Of course, because I was never fucking sick in the first place. In the days that followed, I did whatever I wanted. They barely dared to breathe around me. They wouldn't even sit at the same table for dinner, waiting until I was finished before they would eat. Even then, I always found an excuse to torment Caleb, leaving the old couple fuming but helpless. Eventually, they started avoiding me altogether, whispering in corners whenever they thought I wasn't looking. The moment I appeared, all conversation would cease. They'd all look away, pretending to be admiring the wallpaper. But I eventually overheard enough to piece together their latest plan. Caleb was truly terrified this time. Sharon's hushed voice drifted from the living room. His anxiety is worse than ever. He can't sleep. He just cries all night. The poor boy, Robert sighed. His only wish is to make things official with Khloe. We could hold a small, private ceremony. With all the negativity in this house lately, a happy occasion might help lift his spirits. I know. It would just be to make him happy. A symbolic gesture. If that psycho hadn't gotten out, they'd already be married by now. I scoffed. Lift his spirits? What century were they living in, still believing in that kind of self-deceiving nonsense? It was clear Caleb's acting skills had improved. He'd successfully painted himself as a tormented victim, oppressed and broken, whose only salvation lay in the arms of his true love. I muttered under my breath. Plan whatever wedding you want. If you can actually pull it off, then my mental illness was all for nothing. 3 days before the wedding, they came home late, laughing and talking until they saw me, at which point their faces fell and they went silent. I couldn't care less. I went to my room early and started reading a book on corporate management I'd found in the study. The original Ethan knew next to nothing about business. His parents had never intended for him to take over the company. Around 10 o'clock, my door creaked open. No knock. Khloe stood in the doorway, wearing a silk slip nightgown. The hallway light behind her outlined her delicate curves. Her expression was a complicated mix of fear and resolve. "Ethan," she whispered, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. She leaned against it, her eyes filled with a sad longing. I know what's happening tomorrow is insane, and I am so sorry. But I've only ever loved you. I've never forgotten how good you were to me." She wasn't wrong. The original Ethan had been utterly devoted to her, practically her slave. He had initially refused to go to the asylum, but his resistance crumbled when Khloe said to him, "I'll marry you the day you get out." The fool went willingly after that. I raised an eyebrow, closed my book, and let my eyes trail up and down her body. I had to admit, she was stunning. It was no wonder the original idiot was willing to do anything for her, only to get nothing but betrayal in return. Seeing I was unmoved, she bit her lip and walked slowly to my bed, reaching for my hand. Her fingertips were cold. Nothing has ever happened between me and Caleb. I swear, I feel sorry for him. He threatens to kill himself every day. I'm just playing along to calm him down. My heart has only ever belonged to you. Only you. Tears welled in her eyes on cue. She looked genuinely pitiful. If the old Ethan were here, his heart would have already melted. I watched her performance for a moment, then I shot my hand out, grabbing her slender wrist. With a sharp tug, I pulled her onto the bed, then rolled over on top of her. My movements were rough, with no trace of tenderness. "Then prove it to me," I growled, my voice low and demanding as I stared into her frightened eyes. She gasped and began to struggle, pushing against my chest. "Ethan, don't. Tomorrow is the MMPH. I silenced her protest with a kiss, a brutal, punishing kiss devoid of any warmth. It was an act of conquest and retribution. Her struggles, at first frantic, slowly subsided into a half-hearted resistance. Her body softened, and under my relentless assault, she finally surrendered, her arms instinctively wrapping around my neck as she began to awkwardly kiss me back. The next morning, on the tangled sheets, a single, startling crimson stain confirmed her story. She had been a virgin. She lay on my sweat-slicked chest, cried her eyes out, telling me in broken sobs how she'd been forced, how Caleb had threatened suicide, how her heart ached for me, and how thinking of me was the only thing that got her through it. "It was Mom and Dad. They made me," she wept. "And Caleb. He said he'd kill himself. I've been so miserable." I pushed her off me and got out of bed, my back to her as I started dressing. "Are you done?" I asked, my voice flat and empty. "If you're done, get out." Her crying stopped abruptly. She pushed herself up, looking at me in disbelief, tears still clinging to her lashes. "Ethan, what are you saying?" She couldn't seem to process how the man who had been inside her all night could be so cold just a few hours later. "Your body may have been clean, but your actions are unforgivable," I said, buttoning the last button on my shirt. I turned to face her. "I have a big gift prepared for you all today. I hope you enjoy it at the wedding." With that, I walked out. Her face went white, as if I had just slapped her. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. The day of the ceremony, the Vance mansion was decorated to look warm and romantic, a thin veneer over the absurdity and hypocrisy underneath. The guests were mostly Robert's business partners and a few close family friends, most of whom knew the sordid details of the family drama. Caleb wore a custom-tailored white suit. My torment had taken its toll. His face was still pale, but with some skillful makeup he looked decent enough. He stood close to Khloe, smiling shyly and blissfully, occasionally gazing at her with a look of profound love. Khloe was in an expensive designer gown, her makeup flawless, but it couldn't hide the puffiness around her eyes or the vacant look in them. She was a puppet, smiling mechanically, her eyes constantly darting toward the entrance, her fingers nervously clenching the fabric of her dress. The moment I appeared at the entrance to the ballroom, the lively chatter died down instantly. I was dressed in my usual casual clothes, looking completely out of place at a wedding, and strolled in without a hurry. The officiant was in the middle of a heartfelt speech. This couple has endured many hardships. Their love is deep, and today they have broken through all barriers to stand here in this moment of celebration. I walked straight onto the stage, ignored the officiant's stunned expression, and snatched the microphone out of his hand. "I'm so glad you could all make it to the wedding of my fiancée and my brother." Robert was the first to react, his face turning a furious shade of purple. He shot up from the head table and rushed the stage. "You bastard, get the hell off of there! Get out," he hissed, trying to maintain some semblance of dignity. Sharon shrieked, "Security! Get security in here and throw him out." I easily dodged Robert's lunging grab, deflecting him with an elbow as I continued speaking calmly into the microphone. "Let me introduce myself. I'm the one they say is mentally ill, the one who supposedly bullied him so badly he couldn't go on living. I'm the real heir. This impostor you see here faked a bipolar diagnosis and threatened suicide to force my fiancée to marry him. I have a doctor from the city hospital who can attest to it." At that moment, a man who had been following me stepped forward, holding several documents. "I'm a psychiatrist from Metropolitan General Hospital," he announced. "What Mr. Vance says is true. Caleb Vance's diagnosis was based on falsified reports. He does not, in fact, suffer from bipolar disorder." "Enough. Both of you shut your mouths. Stop spreading these lies." Robert completely lost control, lunging at us to stop the doctor from speaking. I sidestepped him and gave my man a look. He understood immediately. He lifted his foot and drove it hard into Robert's stomach. "Oof!" Robert let out a pained grunt, staggering backward several steps before collapsing ungracefully onto the stage. He clutched his stomach, a vein throbbing in his forehead, too winded to even speak. The man with me was a bodyguard I'd hired to play the part. With such a bombshell dropped at a wedding, nobody was going to stop and check his credentials. The guests were all buzzing, exchanging juicy gossip. Of course, Caleb wouldn't dare call the police. It would only prove that he was faking his illness. The room erupted. Guests were whispering, pointing, their faces a mixture of shock, contempt, and morbid excitement. Some were already covertly recording with their phones. Caleb began to tremble violently. He pointed at me, then turned to the guests, his voice breaking into a sob. "No, that's not what happened. Don't believe him. My brother's insane. He just got out of the asylum. He hates me. He's making all this up to ruin my life. Khloe, tell them. Tell them we're in love." He reached for Khloe's hand. Khloe recoiled as if she'd been burned, snatching her hand away and taking several steps back, putting a clear distance between them. Her reaction was more damning than any denial. I let out a cold laugh and threw the microphone at Caleb, hitting him squarely in the face. "Shut up, you fake," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise with an icy edge. "Keep up this act, and I swear I'll throw you off this stage right now and let you turn this soap opera into a real tragedy." Seeing that I wasn't joking, Caleb instantly fell silent. He trembled like a terrified quail, backing away slowly. The scene was pure chaos. The officiant had fled to a corner. Robert was groaning on the floor. Sharon was screaming obscenities. The guests were filming and gossiping. Caleb was pale and shaking, and Khloe stood frozen, completely lost. I stood center stage, savoring the chaos and despair I had created. A thrilling sense of victory washed over me. The story of the disastrous engagement party spread through the city's elite circles like wildfire. The Vance family became the biggest joke in town, the subject of every gossip column and dinner party conversation. Robert and Sharon finally seemed to wake up from their self-delusion, realizing with chilling certainty that the psycho they had personally committed was willing to burn everything to the ground, using the most humiliating, reckless methods to destroy their reputation and make their lives a living hell. They were afraid, not out of guilt, but out of pure terror. They were afraid of the baseball bat in my hand, of my get-out-of-jail-free diagnosis. Most of all, they were afraid of the look in my eyes, the look of a man who had nothing left to lose and would dare to do anything. But what I didn't expect was that even after all this, after Caleb's true nature had been exposed, Robert and Sharon continued to protect him. I truly could not comprehend the minds of these villains from a fictional world. Whether they felt they owed Caleb, or they were just trying to salvage one last shred of dignity, they hatched a plan to quietly transfer the majority of the company's shares and several key properties into Caleb's name. The official reason was to compensate him for his suffering and trauma, and to ensure his future is secure. A thank you for his years of companionship. In their dreams, everything in this house belonged to me now. If you gave it to me, I'd take it. If you didn't, I'd fucking take it by force. You don't want to do this the easy way? Fine. We'll do it the hard way. One evening, the sound of dress shoes and something being dragged echoed down the hallway toward Robert's study. Crash. I entered in the only way that felt right anymore. Robert was at his desk, frowning at his computer screen and a stack of papers, making small edits with a pen. The sound made him jump, and the pen clattered to the floor. When he saw me, his face went deathly white. What are you doing here? I dropped the object I'd been dragging, Caleb, beaten, bloody, and looking like a dead dog, onto the floor. I strode over to the desk and snatched the document he was working on. I glanced at the title, Draft of Deed of Gift for Company Shares. I skimmed the contents. He was giving every company he owned to Caleb. The remaining assets were being used to purchase a luxury estate in the scenic mountains of North Carolina for their retirement. I read to the end. Not a single cent for me. I sneered and, right in front of him, slowly tore the meticulously drafted agreement in half, then folded it and tore it again and again until it was nothing but confetti. Then I tossed the scraps into the air. The white pieces of paper fluttered down onto his bald head and his expensive suit. Making moves behind my back, old man. I leaned in, grabbed the collar of his silk shirt, and effortlessly hauled the paunchy, middle-aged man out of his leather chair. The fabric tightened around his throat, cutting off his breath. His face instantly turned purple. Looks like I didn't kick you hard enough last time. Did you forget your lesson? You cough. How dare you? What do you think you're doing? Robert struggled, trying feebly to pry my hands off him, but my grip was like iron. His legs kicked uselessly. It's legal. It's my property. I can give it to whoever I want. It's none of your business, he wheezed, trying to assert his parental and legal authority, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his terror. Legal. I laughed, a sound that made his blood run cold. With my free hand, I pulled the metal baseball bat from where it was tucked into the back of my jeans. I tapped the cool metal against the polished mahogany desk, making a rhythmic, heart-stopping thump, thump, thump. You want to talk about the law with me? Fine. Let's talk. You tell me. If a certified mental patient suddenly has an episode and beats you to death, is that illegal? The next second, the cold metal of the bat was pressed against his greasy cheek. He shuddered violently, and beads of sweat popped out on his forehead. You wouldn't dare. I'm your father. You can't. Try me, I said, pressing the bat harder, distorting the features of his face. You remember you're my father now. How have you treated me? And now you're giving away the entire family fortune and not leaving me a dime. Don't blame me for not recognizing you as a father. Has your brain been eaten by dogs? You'd rather give everything to an outsider than to me. Well, don't blame me for what happens next. Staring into my savage eyes, he finally broke. What do you want? I pointed to Caleb's unconscious form on the floor. I don't want much. I'm just going to beat you until you look like him. Then we're going to draft a new contract, and you're going to sign it with your bloody thumbprint. Then I'm going to lock your real family in the basement and keep you like dogs. How does that sound? Seeing the undisguised madness in my eyes, Robert's last line of defense crumbled. He had no doubt that I, the psycho, would actually kill him, that I would actually do it. Under my supervision, his face ashen, he called his lawyer and financial advisor and, in record time, arranged for the transfer of all assets. One by one, the documents were printed out and spread across the desk. Share transfer agreements, property deeds, titles to everything. All in my name. I stood up, put away the bat, and walked over to Robert, who had collapsed in his chair, looking 20 years older. I slapped his graying cheek lightly with the stack of papers. See, should have just been this obedient from the start, I said breezily. Would have saved us all from pulling an all-nighter. Seeing their utterly defeated faces, I found a sliver of mercy in my heart. I decided not to throw them out. Oh, and by the way, this house is mine now. The three of you can stay on as my personal staff. After all, I smiled. A man needs someone to order around, right? From that day on, the Vance family hierarchy was turned upside down. The magnificent mansion in Sterling Gates now had only one master, me. The former lord and lady of the manor, Robert and Sharon, they became my exclusive servants, on call 24/7. Crash! I knocked a cup of tea off the table. This tea is cold. How many times do I have to tell you I only drink it at exactly 113 degrees? Yes, yes. I'll get you a new one right away, Robert stammered, scurrying out of the room. And you, I said to Sharon, this floor is filthy. Are you blind? Clean it up. Of course. Right away, she mumbled, grabbing a rag and getting on her knees. As for Caleb, I drove him truly insane. Then I had him committed to the same psychiatric hospital he sent me to. The suffering I endured for 3 months will be his for the rest of his life. And Khloe, she became my secret, on-call mistress, to be summoned and dismissed at my whim. Every time she came over, she would try to win me back with tears in her body, telling me how she had no choice, how much she loved me, begging me to marry her. And every time, I'd promise her whatever she wanted to hear. Then, after I was finished with her, I'd pull up my pants and forget her name. Even if I get married and have children someday, that woman will never be Khloe. But having a beauty like her around isn't so bad. As for the future, I'll take it one step at a time. For now, the most important thing is to build my empire and enjoy my life to the absolute fullest. End of story.